On the field. Off the field. Sports talk. Entertainment and more. This is Sauce on the Side.
Well, hello there, Dippers, and welcome back to episode 86 of the Sauce on the Side podcast. As always, Dippers, I'm your host, Drake, joined by the man, the producer, Mr. Leighton Bib Shavantone.
So, shit take of the week isn't on this week's forecast, but I just want to bring this in still because pissing me off people talk just to talk. Jeff Van Gundy set up LeBron James. You guys seen this?
What'd he say?
Oh, yeah.
You gotta get on the right timeline. I'm going to say, if I could trade him to the Clippers for, say, cap space, which would give me a better chance at getting Durant or Kawhi Leonard, why would I not do that? Sure, that's a possible thing, but it's just not gonna fucking happen. So you're talking for no reason.
Yeah,
It's not even possible.
I think that you have a
clause.
Not impossible.
yes, you have a better chance of getting LeBron, or you have a better chance of getting another star if you already have LeBron. So
I can't remember if it was Mark Jackson or the other guy who does the show, but he was like, doesn't he have a no trade clause?
It was Mark Jackson.
And Jeff Van Gundy's response was, I don't think they do those anymore.
that's awesome.
Nope, that's in there.
You got a job to do, and it's no basketball, and you can't even do it.
They expelled those after Melo got his.
Yeah.
And, guys, you heard the voice already. From Hump Day Hoops Hysteria, our guest host for today's show is Mr. Fletcher Hoig.
Yeah, we all know LeBron broke Michael's scoring record, but one thing I don't enjoy hearing is people saying, wow, he's not even a scorer. Well, he didn't get to be fourth by not being a scorer, so let's just go ahead and erase that one now.
Yeah, I love that. We build our own narratives just to tear them down. Guys, so be sure to listen on Spotify, iTunes, download, subscribe, and give us a 5-star review. Be sure to follow on Twitter and Instagram at The Saucy Pod. Easiest way to find the podcast because we usually tweet them after they come out. Guys, we actually have a very loaded show for you today. It is the conference championships for the actual big schools now. So we're going to break down each of those conference tournaments, talk about those a little bit, who we like as dark horses in those tournaments, and who we ultimately think is going to win. We're going to talk a little bit about the NBA and the problems that the Lakers are having. Seems like every week we have a different story developing with the Lakers. And we have an interview with Aaron Elliott. He works with multiple camps across the nation, owns 2 of his camps of his own, has worked with Nike's Elite 11. He comes in, talks about quarterbacks in this upcoming draft, talked about wide receivers. Very, very good interview, guys. We basically got 50 minutes into this interview, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, I cannot believe that this has been this long. It is so good, so much information. We had to actually dial it into 2 separate interviews. So today you will hear the talk about the quarterbacks. Next week we will provide you all the information you need to know about wide receivers in this draft class. Honestly, great conversation. I think you guys will really enjoy it if you're football fans, and if you listen to the show, more often than not, you are a football fan.
When do you get to the punters?
I don't know if we're going to break down punters. I don't know how much you can really break them down. Talking about the draft, you'll have like 1 or 2 guys.
Don't tell Pat McAfee that.
That's true. Yeah, well,
In honor of Coach C, you should talk about kickers.
that would be important.
Very important.
Very important. So, guys, we'll go ahead and talk about the NBA here. Talk about the Lakers. Guys, the Lakers have officially shut Brandon Ingram down for the remainder of the season after being diagnosed with a blood clot. This basically puts a fork in the season for the Lakers, who are already several games behind 8th place at this point. How will we remember LeBron James' first season as a Laker?
What could have been, seriously, they had LeBron missed 17, 18 games, and then, Rondo and Lonzo Ball go down, so you went from losing, arguably the best player in the world to having no point guards, and Kuzma, Ingram, they both had streaks throughout the season, so they couldn't hold it down while those injuries occurred. Too much to ask for. So it's really just a case of what could have been, And then with the Brandon Ingram injury, when I read it before I knew what it was, I thought that was like one of those I didn't know the name for it, never heard of it, anything like that. Like they could have just said blood clot, and the whole world would have known what that meant. But they had the crazy name built up for it, and so I thought that was like Markelle Fultz kind of injury, like it's a phantom kind of injury that nobody really knows about. And so I thought, well, if they're just going to say that, hell, just shut everybody down and say, LeBron pulled his groin again or something. But they're putting LeBron on minutes restriction. They shut down Lonzo Ball too. It's over. They're tanking. They're just going to try to get a better pick. I said it's probably going to be a stain on his legacy, missing the playoffs like this in his 16th, 17th year, whatever it is, at 34 years old. But I said, the best thing that could have happened for them moving forward is not trading for Anthony Davis. They get that pick. They get all those young guys still. They get to explore free agency. So, but yeah, for me, it's going to be what could have been. If guys hadn't got hurt, if they stayed healthy, you're looking at a team that's definitely making the playoffs, maybe even a top 4 seed.
Yeah, to add to that, I kind of think it's kind of embarrassing. It is embarrassing to make the playoffs, but just kind of how it happened. Yeah, he did get hurt, but we've seen him standing back to the huddle. We saw an instance where Kyle Kuzma actually pushed LeBron into playing defense.
Yeah.
Like, LeBron just looked disinterested, and it looked like he almost came to LA and just said, okay, Magic, I'm going to respect what you want to do, but in the end, we're going to do it my way, and we both know it. Mm-hmm. And I think he just kind of showed he was over Magic's way after the All-Star break.
Yeah, I think if you think about the Lakers, obviously this is one of the more disappointing years that they've basically ever had. The only exception that you could maybe argue would be the year that they missed the playoffs after they acquired Steve Nash, Dwight Howard. They had Meta World Peace and Kobe Bryant. Like, that team was very, very good. Yeah, and Pau Gasol. I mean, that team was loaded to the gore. But now you're talking about a completely different animal. A LeBron James that we have not seen outside the playoffs in the last 14 years. Like, basically, as long as Kansas has won the Big 12, LeBron has been in the playoffs. So it's kind of an odd situation that this team is in. And we looked at this Lakers team just a year ago. They were able to win 35 games out of the 82. They did miss the postseason. But coming into this year, a lot of people thought that this was a fringe playoff team even before the acquisition of LeBron. You look at all these players, you're going to say every single one of these guys are going to get better. They're all super young. They'll get a year older. And then once you get LeBron, you're looking at a top 4 seed. And anytime you put LeBron on a team, especially a fringe playoff team, you are almost guaranteeing yourself as a top 4 seed. This team will be lucky to finish, as they're playing right now, they'll be lucky to finish with the same record they had last year. I mean, they're going to have to win 5 of their next 16 games. I know it seems like a very sure thing, but with how this Lakers team's been playing lately, it's not a guaranteed thing that they're even better than what they were last year, which absolutely makes no sense in my opinion. I think Fletcher summed it up the best, really what could have been with this team. So we'll go ahead.
Real quick, they, talking about it not going through. I mean, if they get Anthony Davis, sure, there's a chance that they might make the playoffs, and you might see a more engaged LeBron. But the fact that they're not making the playoffs, I mean, you're looking at a LeBron James who's finally going to get an offseason, too. So, I mean, that real rest moving forward is going to be huge. But just one last thing off Layton's point, I mean, it seems like, Kobe Bryant was a Laker, Magic Johnson was a Laker, even Kareem to some extent was a Laker, Jerry West a Laker. But with LeBron, it's like he's just playing for the Lakers. This is more of a business arrangement than anything else, and it really feels like it's shown since the All-Star break.
Yeah, I actually agree with you 100% there. It seems like he's just a player on the team instead of actually being a Laker.
Right.
So we'll go ahead and talk about the Rockets here. Guys, they are absolutely on fire. Last night, I wrote this. I wrote the outline before the Rockets game, and they are so hot that I went ahead and penciled them in for a win last night. They've now won 8 games in a row. They look to be peaking at the right time. Is it safe to say that this team is back to what they were when they took the Warriors 7 games in the Western Conference Finals?
Well, I'm not going to say all that because, for one, that's an incredibly tall task to accomplish. And then on top of that, the Warriors didn't have a healthy DeMarcus Cousins last year. So we're just going to see how that shakes out in the Western Conference. But one thing that worries me moving forward for the Houston Rockets is, Chris Paul took a hurt for, or a dive for most of the season, or early in the season, middle of the season, when you saw James Harden go on that incredible scoring run where he averaged all those games in a row of 30 points. I've seen James Harden in the past where he has phenomenal regular season numbers, and then I've seen what happens to James Harden in those seasons during the postseason too. He has gone flat multiple times in the playoffs. He's just fatigued. He can't handle that workload. So that makes me concerned. The only hope is that, towards the end of the season, Chris Paul can shoulder some of that load, and then the postseason as well. But yeah, they're clicking on all cylinders. They've got Capella back. They've got Capella going. They've got Chris Paul back. He's going. James Harden is going to continue to do his thing. They have some pieces around there. Eric Gordon's been extremely well. Been playing extremely well since the All-Star break. Iman Shumpert. They've got a number of pieces there. PJ Tucker, who are all playing well for him. So it's hard for me to say that they can take the Warriors 7 games, but yeah, they're on fire and they're definitely hot when you want to be.
Yeah, talk about real quick the overreaction to the NBA. Like early on, like even like 2 months in, think way back to Humphrey hysteria.
I know where you're going with it already.
The Rockets were like a 12 or 13 seed. They just lost Chris Paul for enough amount of time. I asked Fletcher, "Oh, they're gonna miss the playoffs," and he didn't say yes, but he gave no optimism at all for what could have happened, especially Chris Paul going down. And now they might be the only team that can beat the Warriors. So that's why he's just NBA, the regular season doesn't matter, but the first 2-3 months really don't mean shit.
Yes, I agree with you because, I mean, obviously they're peaking at the right time, and they struggled mightily at the very beginning of the season, and we're looking at now, hell, they may get the 2 seed in the West. Like right now, it looks like they're just about locked into a top 4 seed, flirting with the 3 seed, and then, possibly going to get a 2 seed, and they played terrible basketball for a good portion of the season, especially at the beginning. And right now, they seem to be peaking at the right time. Fletcher hit at it earlier. Are we going to see a fatigued James Harden once the playoffs roll around? So I ask you, Fletcher. We know how the playoffs work. In the semifinals, you're going to match up, a 1 versus a 4 more than likely, and a 2 versus a 3. Do you think that it would be smart to maybe rest James Harden down this stretch, maybe ensure Chris Paul's going to be healthy for the postseason, and maybe not necessarily care about the difference between a 3 and a 5 seed?
Yeah, I definitely would consider it. I mean, if you get first round locked up, or first round home court advantage, you definitely want to take that. But at some point, I would consider looking at sitting down James Harden, especially if Chris Paul feels like he's going well. Because honestly, when you get to that second round, you could see Harden, if he plays all the way through there for the regular season and all of the first round of the playoffs, you could see Harden really start to peter out against the Warriors, the Denver Nuggets, or even the Oklahoma City Thunder in that second round. So you got to look at preserving the guy in the shoulder of how he shouldered the load there for so long. So if Chris Paul is healthy, I think it's something you definitely discuss. Even a minutes restriction at the minimum, though.
Right. I actually agree with you. I think that it would be smarter for this team to maybe drop 1 or 2 down the stretch, end up with that 4 seed, get the Warriors in the second round, instead of waiting to you have 10 full games of playoff James Harden playing 40-plus minutes, and you get him a lot earlier rather than later. I think that's something that they should probably explore.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, you need the rest more now. Well, here's the thing. You can get the rest now, and you need the rest now because when you're, late in April playing at Denver, in game 4 or 5 or whatever, assuming you make it to the second round, you just don't have the option to rest him, and you don't have the option to limit his minutes either. So you definitely need to explore all options right now to have somebody ready for in the postseason. I mean, you saw last year with the Cavaliers, they were the 4 seed. Didn't matter, though, because once playoffs came around, LeBron kicked it in. I mean, just talent took over against everybody he faced.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that point on that.
So you think that Harden could be the key there to the Rockets winning the championship?
Yeah, he might be the only key outside of Chris Paul.
You think that's an actual possibility?
Yes, I do.
It's a pretty outrageous thought. Just going off history. You got more outrageous thoughts for us?
Yes, I do, actually.
It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine.
I see it now. Kyler Murray playing in the Coliseum in Oakland just for John Gruden. NCAA basketball seeding. No losses to LSU should count against resumes because these wins will eventually be vacated. We call this the Rick Pitino rule. Manny Machado, already fighting for the wild card spot in March. He's already adjusted to the Padres culture. Skip Bayless said he would rather have Amari Cooper than Antonio Brown. That is all. Rasheed Wallace, named the head basketball coach at Jordan High School in North Carolina. The team motto, ball don't lie. As if we had seen it all. We now have an NFL player openly saying he wants to quit football so he can smoke weed. I'm sure David Irving won't regret that decision in 5 years. David Irving, 2019 Josh Gordon. Kansas basketball. Not responsible for a Big 12 basketball title this season, but Kansas basketball is responsible for a bald-headed Brandon Riker that will be coming to a bar near you.
All right.
Jose Canseco, A-Rod, Dana White, book it. And there's a new book out this week. It's titled The Second Best Team at the Staples Center, and it was written by LeBron James.
You know, Rasheed Wallace, he coaches that high school team, but he's been doing work with like the Nike. It's not 100. It's like the sophomore or junior class, and they do it like 50 or 60. He's been doing work with the Nike top 100 or 60 for high school kids for a long time, and he's actually turned down like multiple NBA jobs just so he can get lined up with that right high school spot that he wants.
Wow, that's actually
Pretty
really
cool.
impressive.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the ultimate high school coach that you don't want to talk back to either.
Oh, hell no. Hell no. I guarantee he will not have any player discipline problems.
No, God, no.
No. One other thing that I hinted on there. Did you guys see Jose Canseco, how crazy he's been going?
Yeah, I laughed so hard at that.
Yeah.
We talked about the Bigfoot thing, 2 weeks ago, then now he's convinced that A-Rod's sleeping with his wife or ex-wife or whatever.
I love Jose Canseco.
Oh, yeah, no, he was crazy before crazy was cool.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, it sure was.
Like, this is, he's way too late on the train now to be crazy. He's like, what, 60? Nah, not that old.
He's a trailblazer.
Trailblazer.
He's a trailblazer of craziness. You know, does baseball potentially have, like, problems with CTE?
They have a problem with people who did, like, super steroids.
Yeah.
Like, super steroids.
I feel like if you want to present to, like, a young adult, like, why steroids are bad, you just have to show them everything that Jose Canseco's done since their prime.
Yeah, that's
There was
shit.
that one
Sammy
time
Sosa,
where he
too.
was playing the outfield, and he went for a fly ball, and the ball bounced off his head and went over the fence. So maybe that was some CTE.
Yeah, this could be repercussions from that. Don't overlook stuff like that. I'm trying to figure out a reason for all this.
That play right there ought to show you that fucking steroids don't help you get better at baseball.
That actually is true. That should be the poster child for steroids. Not that play right there should be the poster child for Barry Bonds' chance at the Hall of Fame.
Right.
So, guys, let's go ahead and talk about a little bit of NCAA basketball. We'll get back to it and dive more into it later on. But we'll just kind of hit some of the headlines here. John Morant makes good on his tweet from March 17th, 2018. In the tweet, he said, quote, NCAA basketball, NCAA tournament, I'll be back, 100, #RacerNation. Morant played all 40 minutes of their game against Belmont, scored 36 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. How far can John Morant take this team in the tournament that'll probably be a 12 or 13 seed?
If you told me that they made it to like the Sweet 16, I wouldn't be surprised. Now, Elite 8, a little more surprised. Final 4, a lot more surprised. But to say that they could make it to the Sweet 16 as an 11, 12, 13, 10 seed, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, the guy's been getting like, 20, 25, 6, and 10 all year. Guy goes off in the conference championship game. I mean, in the NCAA tournament, if he doesn't play 40, 38 minutes again, I'd be surprised, because if he's out there all game long, he can control the game. He can control the pace of the game. He can definitely will you to some wins. Ignore injury and foul trouble if that doesn't occur. I mean, he can really take over a game. He was one of the reasons also why I said Murray State wasn't a sleeper. You talk about true sleepers in NCAA basketball. People know about Murray State. They have a hell of a record, and they have a hell of a ball player. So it wouldn't shock me to see them go to the Sweet 16 at all.
Just to echo what he said, we talk about every day we do this about how you win games in a tournament, and it's just veteran guards who want to control the game, and they have the best guard in the country who's a senior, so they can do that.
Sophomore. He's sophomore, actually.
Sophomore.
Yeah, he is.
Why is he senior?
Yeah, could you guys imagine, like, whenever he played high school basketball and he played in AAU, him and Zion Williamson were teammates?
I think I saw that.
How ridiculous of a team do you like? I could coach that team to multiple national titles. Just roll the ball out there and just say, "Hey guys, just play pickup, and we're gonna go win national titles." Like that is unbelievable. But if you look at John Morant and you look at where Joe Lunardi has them seeded out in the tournament, right now Joe Lunardi has them playing a 5 seed in Maryland, which I honestly think that John Morant is good enough. He's the best player on the court almost any time he's out there, unless they play Duke. So I think he could win that game. Then they would be feeding right into a Kansas team that obviously is not the Kansas team that we thought we would have this season. And I really wouldn't be surprised if they were able to pull that one off as well. So if we look up, week and a half from today and we're like, well, this team is, this team's in the Sweet 16, I honestly will not be surprised one bit. And honestly, with a player like John Morant, who I said probably a month and a half ago in my thoughts, John Morant is Russell Westbrook with a conscience. Like, I think that kind of player could take this team pretty far. And like Fletcher said, I don't even think they're a sleeper at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they got 27 wins on the year. After that win against Belmont in their conference championship, that was their 11th win in a row. So, I mean, they're another one of those teams that's like peaking at the right time. They've got the best player, one of the best players in the country, and I can say that without even thinking. That's so wild to say coming from Murray State. But John Morant, Murray State, they could definitely make it to the Sweet 16. They have more than just him, too. That's what's so impressive. They have a number of guards who can shoot it and score. So to say they make it to the Sweet 16 it's not shocking to me at all.
Yeah, and you look at John Morant, his biggest play of the whole entire night, like maybe not for as far as like Sports Center, because obviously he had 2 tremendous dunks in the game against Belmont, but the most important play of the game was actually set up off of a John Morant assist. So the players around him, they can obviously score when they're open, and John Morant will find them. So I am very, very excited to see this player back in the tournament. So guys, since being listed as day-to-day 19 days ago, we still have not seen Zion Williamson on the court for Duke. Duke is now done with their regular season, heads into the ACC tournament. They're 3-3 in their last 6 games following their most recent loss to North Carolina. The bench actually got smaller this week. They lost Marquise Bolden. We don't really have a timetable for that injury. Do you guys think that Duke has time to figure things out before the tournament starts?
Which tournament?
The NCAA tournament.
Well, they gotta hope that Zion comes back, because if Duke gets Zion back, then seeding, kind of like with the Rockets, like we were talking earlier, isn't that big of a deal. You got a dude who can really just go out there and dominate the game on both ends of the floor. Losing Baldwin hurts, but to see Duke struggle this bad, it's kind of weird. It's like if LeBron James was on the Warriors and LeBron got hurt while playing on the Warriors, and then the Warriors went 500, because they had four of the top 4 recruits coming into this year. They had a number of guys coming back from last year. Coach K doesn't get bad recruiting classes, and then they have Coach K, who's a Hall of Fame coach. So I don't really understand how they could be 3-3. They've got so much talent there with RJ and Cam Reddish and Trey Jones, and then sure Baldwin goes down, but they've got talent up and down the roster. I don't understand this. If they don't get it together in the ACC tournament and Zion doesn't come back, then chances are the NCAA tournament won't be much more kind to them.
Yeah, I think he is going to play an ACC tournament because Duke can't take a chance of losing the money for winning that thing. But I don't know. Another humongous worry with Duke is now, like you said, the lack of bench depth. They've already had none, and now they have, I guess negative either come for that now. But if Zion does come back and does play awesome, the team can't beat anybody. But can Zion play on that knee for the minutes that is needed to win in tournaments?
Yeah, I definitely think that this team is in some hot water. I mean, you look up and down the roster, and you really can't see anybody that's grabbing minutes for this team that at one point or another wasn't a top 100 recruit. And more importantly, you have 3 of the top 13 or so recruits just from last season that have kind of, I know that they're putting up numbers, but as an outcome of the game, they're kind of coming up flat. And if you lose your best player for a period of time and you struggle that way, I don't expect how you can just turn an on switch and your team just be back to normal. Like Fletcher said earlier, it would be the equivalent of losing LeBron James on the Warriors. Well, all we really have to do is just look at the Lakers. Whenever LeBron went out with an injury, this team was actually a formidable team. with the Lakers, and then they struggle without LeBron, and once LeBron comes back, they still struggle because the mindset is completely different with the team. If LeBron can't get a team to turn an on and off switch like that coming back from an injury, I don't know how you can expect a Zion Williamson to jump right back into this Duke powerhouse and expect to just hit the on switch for this team, especially whenever you look at this ACC tournament that is absolutely loaded. And, if they struggle at all, they could realistically only have one game or two games with Zion Williamson back on the court before you're heading into March Madness. So I think that they're in a lot of trouble. I would not be surprised if this team didn't get bounced, in the Sweet 16, even more realistically, the Elite Eight. But I don't think that they are the same team that was once a plus 150 chance to win the NCAA basketball tournament.
Sorry, Brandon.
Yes.
I got one more point to say about Zion. When he got hurt, people talked about whether he should shut it down or whatever, for the draft and all that. And there's one scout that I was reading from, and he was saying, talking about the college model and stuff like that. Zion really has made a whole lot of money going to Duke. Like, his draft stock has risen tremendously. Coming out of high school, there were definitely doubts about his game, whether he could handle it, whether he could shoot it, what were his capabilities against, other elite players, or peers of his caliber. And the thing is, that's true. His draft stock has gone up. I can't argue that. But where I disagree with the guy is he said he still has so much more money to make by coming back this season. I say, no, he doesn't. He only has money to lose. If you're the top recruit, the only thing you can do from there is go down. So I argue he has more money to lose by coming back out and playing versus the amount of money he can gain.
You're forgetting about that NCAA championship bonus that Duke gives out every year.
Yeah, I'm forgetting the pride that he could have forever if a banner hangs in the rafters.
Yes. So we'll go ahead and head to Fletch on the Fly, guys. This is a really fun segment. This was something that Leighton and Fletch obviously invented on Hump Day Hoops Hysteria. So if you listen to that, you are very, you know what this segment's about. Basically, Leighton brings in questions for Fletch. Fletch has zero time to prepare for them. The first time he hears the questions or whenever they come out of Leighton's mouth. So, guys, it is time for Fletch on the Fly.
Okay, so let's say Zion Williamson plays at Duke again and gets really hurt, like breaks his foot, tears his ACL, just something really bad. Is he still a lock to go number one?
No, he definitely wouldn't be a lock. I could definitely still see him going number one because the team would take him and know that they have a guy who could potentially change their franchise, just tank one more year and get him and plus another star potentially in a better draft pick coming. I could see that happening. But if it's a team, maybe like the Atlanta Hawks or something, who have young pieces there, could have multiple draft picks this year in the first round, I could see them taking an R.J. Barrett, a guy who's ready to go in right now. But, he would definitely not be a lock, but he could still go number one.
All right, next question. Me and Jake talked about this yesterday. Tobias Harris is having a really, really good season for the 76ers. He's up in star status now. So you think it's more likely that Tobias takes a slight pay cut and go play for a contender next year, or he goes to the MAC contract for a team the caliber of like the Heat or the Hornets?
That's a tough question. I could see. Here's the thing: all Elton Brand has to do is convince the ownership group that this group is it, and they would shell out the money. Philadelphia is a big market, despite what you've seen the past few years from them. I could see him taking a huge max deal from Philadelphia. The most they could offer him, staying in Philadelphia and being on a contender. So I think what's most likely going to happen is you're going to see both happen in the same place in Philadelphia.
I actually have a little idea for you guys for Tobias Harris. If he was smart and he I would love to see him in a Pacer uniform. But if he was smart and he wants to be the go-to guy, go back to the Clippers.
That is true.
He could do that.
That is true.
That would be an ultimate power move by Tobias Harris and the Clippers both.
Doc Rivers would get a raise for that one.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Let's do our last question. Time for you to play NFL GM. And there's also segues that's great into our next segment. You're John Gruden. Just got Antonio Brown. What's the next big splash you make?
Le'Veon Bell.
You bring him in, you pay him $16 million a year?
Yeah, I don't understand it. You're not willing to pay Khalil Mack or Amari Cooper, but, bring in the older guys, pay them, no problem. That's what I'd do if I was him.
Dude, if you look at the way John Gruden has handled business back whenever he was like with the Buccaneers, like his and the Raiders previously, like his teams had such a short shelf life to be good for like 2 or 3 seasons because every single player that he would bring in were just super old players with like 1 or 2 years left. I am honestly surprised that this team didn't try to solve their rushing woes with Terrell Suggs. I am very surprised that they did not do that.
That would be funny. That wouldn't have surprised me one bit. When I saw that he signed, the first thing I did was scroll down to see if it was indeed the Raiders.
It wouldn't have surprised me. I'm actually more surprised that it was not the Raiders that signed him.
Yeah, I know.
So, guys, as we had promised earlier, Aaron Elliott, very, very good football mind. I enjoyed this conversation a ton. Like I said, this interview is so good, so long, we had to break it up into 2 separate shows. That way we could fit our time restraints so you guys aren't listening to a 6-hour podcast today. But you will hear all you need to know about the quarterback draft class for 2019. Hope you enjoy. All right, Dippers, today we have a very special guest. Actually, brother of a guest that we've had in the past, Joey Elliott. Today we bring on Aaron Elliott. Today he's going to talk a lot about the NFL draft. More specifically, we're going to talk quarterbacks and wide receivers for this upcoming draft class. Aaron is involved with the college exposure camps, Elliott Quarterback Academy, and he has also he's also worked with the Elite 11 camps. So, Mr. Elliott, welcome to the kennel.
Thank you for having me.
So go ahead and tell us real quick what kind of job you have with these academies and these camps that you work with.
Sure. So I'm the current president of the Elliott Quarterback Academy and the College Exposure Camp. My brother Joey, who the aforementioned current Indianapolis Scout, was the former president and current part owner of the Elliott Quarterback Academy, and we at that point formed another LLC about the College Exposure Camps. And what the College Exposure Camps are, where it allows young players, primarily, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors in high school, an opportunity to compete in front of college coaches at the smaller levels. Anything below Division I, which if you're not familiar with the FBS, anything below Division I, there's a lot of places to play college football across the country that provide athletic scholarship money for those players. What we do is we put on the camp, if you will, we're the marketing intermediate between, the camp, the coaches, and then the players. We put on the camp. We bring all the coaches into one place, typically between 10 and 15 to 20 colleges at one time. Normally average between 100 and 150 high school players trying to compete for those scholarships. The Elite 11 is the aforementioned, that is put on by Nike and Student Sports, which is based in California. About 5 years ago, I was hooked up with them, and they asked me to come on tour with them at several of their locations across the country in the regionals to evaluate high school quarterbacks, typically the best of the best. Oddly enough, I know we're going to talk about Drew Lock. I saw Lock in high school coming out. So he was an Elite 11 quarterback for us, and got to see him throw in person as a high school junior, which is pretty neat. So felt pretty comfortable with the ability to assess his ability, as well as some of the other quarterbacks and receivers in this class.
Okay, so you talked about the college exposure camps, which is kind of interesting to me. You said that, most of these players are guys who are fighting for scholarships, maybe at the Division II level or something along that nature. What is it like to have those players in there, and how often do you have a player that comes to one of those camps that's maybe flown under the radar their whole entire high school career, maybe hasn't had any Division I offers? How rare is it that you have a player in those camps that you look at and you say, this guy could actually compete at a Division I level?
It is rare. The internet has allowed recruiting, especially at the Division I level. They have such a long reach. It is rare. Has it happened? Yeah, it's happened. Because if you look at the NFL draft, obviously there are players that are drafted at the 1AA level and the Division II level every year. And so does it happen? Are kids that are talented go to smaller schools and stuff like that and make it? Absolutely. Does it happen all the time? No. I think because of people, there's so much money poured into recruiting at the Division I level. Most of the time, kids are, players and stuff like that are found. However, there are those rare occasions that, someone will show up at one of our camps and they have that Division I. I would say 80% of the time, you have to meet the measurables of Division I before you can be a Division I athlete. You need to be able to be, it's no different than the NFL Combine. The reason why they have the NFL Combine is they have analytics that prove that the receivers are going to be at least this fast to be successful. The quarterbacks are going to be at least this tall and weigh this much. For instance, the NFL backup right now, the average NFL backup is 6'3". The average NFL starter is 6'3.5" in the NFL quarterback. Well, no different than that in the collegiate game. Division I coaches are looking for kids that are 6'3", 6'3.5", that weigh 200 pounds. They want that size and those measurables and stuff of that nature before they'll even look at your ability to throw the ball or anything like that, or catch the ball or whatever.
Right. So you had talked about, how the average NFL quarterback is 6'3". One guy we're going to talk about here, and it was maybe the most electric time of the Combine. We measured a human being, and that human being ended up being Kyler Murray, and he measured out at 5'10". You had talked about how the average NFL quarterback is 6'3". What did Kyler Murray, measuring in at 5'10", do for his draft stock?
Well, I'll be honest with you. In Kyler's specific instance, Kyler, I think people thought Kyler was actually going to be smaller than that.
Yeah, I actually was looking at his Instagram pictures with him, with other athletes that, were 5'10", 5'11", maybe close to 6 foot, and I actually thought, I was guessing that Kyler Murray was going to be about 6'8.5".
Yeah, so he was, I think a lot of the GMs and the scouts in the league thought that he'd probably come in around 5'8 and a quarter, 5'8 and a half. So in his scenario, measuring in at 5'10 and a quarter, you could put that in comparison. The two people that you would, everybody in the NFL compares current players to players in the NFL because there's been very few people that they've never seen before. So the two comparisons that are jumping off the page currently, Russell Wilson and Baker Mayfield. Okay. Now, I do think from a perspective of Kyler's draft stock is benefiting, as a beneficiary of how much success Baker Mayfield had last year in the NFL. Right? If you remember specifically right now, this time frame, we are about 8 weeks away from the NFL draft. However, Baker Mayfield, on most people's draft boards, if you looked at Todd McShay, if you went back and looked at, some of the more prominent draft experts, Baker Mayfield was number 4, number 5, number 6 on those lists. All the talk was Rosen, the quarterback out of USC that went to the Jets. Those were the, even Lamar Jackson had more kind of, if you will, buzz than Baker Mayfield did. But as the draft process, the interview process, the film development, the discussions of the board, Baker continued to rise, and then he had, probably one of the more successful rookie campaigns of any quarterback in recent memory. So because of that, Kyler Murray is really benefiting to that because in the sense of they're incredibly similar players. Baker is a little bit bigger. I think Baker last year measured in, and correct me if I'm wrong, at 6 foot and 7/8 of an inch. So he's only 2 inches taller than Kyler. And I think Kyler weighed in at 207 pounds, which is more than Baker did and more than Russell Wilson did. So from that perspective, Kyler really benefited himself because people thought that he was going to be smaller than that.
Right.
And so you're taking a guy with electric speed. Now, he didn't run the 40 at the Combine, right? Electric speed. I mean, he's an electrifying player, Kyler Murray is. He didn't run the 40 at the combine. However, at 5'10", 207, larger, weighs more than, those aforementioned two players that are his comps in the NFL. You got to say, to his perspective, it really worked out to his benefit.
Right.
Now, was he 6'3" like the prototypical player in the NFL? No, but does the prototypical player in the NFL run a 4.4 40 and has been drafted in the first round of the MLB draft? Right? Not very many players have the skill set that Kyler Murray has.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a rarity. And you've talked about how the quarterbacks are all, supposed to be about 6'3". I've actually come on here and argued several times that I think height is one of the most overvalued things whenever it comes to the quarterback position. Because if people always make the argument, oh, he can't see over his offensive line. Well, the average offensive lineman in the NFL is 6'5". So if you don't have a quarterback that's 6'7", he's not going to be able to see over those guys anyways. Do you think that there really is something to be said about quarterbacks not being able to see over the line, even though virtually no starting quarterbacks in the NFL are taller than the average lineman?
Well, I think you have two ways to look at that, okay? The argument of seeing over the line is kind of that's an argument that is made by people that may or may not know. If you look at some of the more prolific passers in history, i.e. Drew Brees is is right at 6 foot. Russell Wilson's had a lot of success in the NFL, is right at 6 foot. Baker Mayfield, the same thing, had a lot of success last year, is right at 6 foot. I don't know necessarily that the height is an issue for the being able to see, but I do think the height it's like your height projects your frame of your body. And typically the larger you are as a human, the more arm strength you'll be able to have, the more hits you're going to be able to withstand, the longer longevity you're going to be able to play in the NFL. The issue that we have with some of these people, you take someone like Cam Newton. Cam Newton is a huge human being. I mean, he's every bit of 6'5", 250, 260 pounds. Well, he takes a lot of hits running the ball in the NFL. And so when you look at it from that perspective, you have to look at their ability to gain weight, to be able to withstand the play in the NFL. Forget overlooking the line of scrimmage. I think it's more of a perspective of, can they gain weight? Can they get bigger? Will it help them drive the ball down the field? Because obviously the bigger you are, the stronger you are. If you play in cold weather, you got to be able to drive the ball through the wind. All of that is directly related to the size of the player. You don't see Joe Flacco had the strongest arm ever recorded coming into the NFL. Ever recorded since the draft. I think Jeff George probably had the strongest arm that anybody's ever seen in the NFL. But in the kind of like the combine era where they really started testing all that, Flacco threw the ball something like 83 yards in the air at his pro day. I think last year or 2 years ago, Mahomes threw it 78 or something to that extent.
Right.
When you're talking about being able to throw the ball, but Flacco and Mahomes are both big human beings. They're not, 5'10". You don't see those. And even Drew Brees, from a perspective of, Drew Brees does not have a huge arm. Now, is he incredibly accurate? Is he find ways to change his release point to get lower line of scrimmage? Absolutely. But he does a great job avoiding hits. He does a great job of being able to prolong his longevity in his career. But from the perspective of just future success, when you're trying to rank a player, when you're trying to predict his future development, there's a reason why those quarterbacks that have been 5'10" or 5'11" in the NFL really haven't been all that successful. And if you look at, even if you throw in Baker and you throw in Russell Wilson, the average height is still 6'3.5" for a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable whenever you consider that a lot of guys are having success at that height. Kind of smaller guys, and the average height is still 6'3". I guess once they get Osweiler out of the league, that'll kind of balance things out a little bit.
He's a large guy too.
Yes. So there's actually quite a few quarterbacks in this draft that actually fit the mold, of the prototypical quarterback. One of the guys that kind of jump off the page at you, if you just look at sheer numbers of what the guy's done over his career plus his stature, is Dwayne Haskins. Do you really have any concern with Dwayne Haskins being a starting NFL quarterback and having a long, successful career, which he's going to get drafted as so, probably being a top 10 pick?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think Dwayne Haskins is going to be drafted in the top 10.
Oh, you don't?
I don't. I think he'll be drafted in the first round. I don't think that Dwayne Haskins is going to be a top 10 pick. I personally, after watching Dwayne's, breaking down some of his collegiate film and also breaking down his, combine throw, I actually have a second round grade on Haskins. I think he's got a long release. I think a lot of his throws that were made in college, even at a 70% completion rate, everything he completed really was within 10 yards of the ball. So they had a hard time, from some inside sources in the NFL. People have had a hard time finding these balls that he's thrown down the field, and even the ones that he did throw down the field, it went from a 70% to under 50. Okay, so I actually have a second round grade on Haskins. Now, will he be drafted in the first round? Absolutely. But as in a grade, for me personally, I got a second round grade on Haskins. So that's kind of where coming out of the docket. He's got a long release. He's kind of top heavy. He only ran 5 flat in the 40, and he's only a 1-year starter. Here's my thing: if Haskins was ultra talented, and I'll throw a question back at you. If Haskins was ultra talented, how could he not have any ability to beat out JT Barrett last year?
Yeah.
Or last year, the year before that.
I agree with you.
If he was really that talented, I mean, JT Barrett was on campus for 2 years with JT Barrett. Okay, 2 years, and JT Barrett he was a solid collegiate player. But if Haskins was that talented, you would think they would have found a way to get him on the field at some level.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. And whenever I've watched Haskins over the course of the season, a lot of the hype on him really didn't buzz up towards the end of the season. And at that point, I think I'd watched probably 3 games of Dwayne Haskins. I definitely watched the game in West Lafayette. I watched the game against Penn State. Those 2 games really stuck out to me. You watch the game against Penn State, they were able to pick up the win, but like you said, and this is something that I've argued since we have talked about, what quarterbacks we think could project out to be the best in the NFL. What he kind of reminded me of in that Penn State game was whenever in those twilight years of Peyton Manning, where everything was wide open within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and basically he's just going to throw it out to his playmakers, which if you look at Ohio State and their wide receiving depth and their, the running backs catching the ball out of the backfield, they are ultra talented. So you get a guy who's 5 yards off the line of scrimmage, he's going to be able to inflate your numbers because he's going to have a tremendous yards after the catch. Where if he was somewhere else, it might not have been the same. And whenever you watch tape on Dwayne Haskins, I think it says more about the coaching staff there and the skill players around him than Dwayne Haskins himself.
I do want to highlight those are the negatives on him. He does have, he is a big upper body. He does have he has the arm talent to play in the NFL. So, and from a perspective of reading defenses, I think that he has that down. I think that his mind is in the right place because if you notice, last year Urban, and Ryan Day, who was their offensive coordinator at the time, is now their head coach. They adapted their offense from a run first shotgun offense to a pass first shotgun offense. And the reason why they adapted, I think, was the ability for Haskins and his ability to distribute the ball amongst those receivers. And they got Terry McLaurin. They had Campbell. Campbell's probably going to be a first round draft pick. Both of those guys are ultra talented. But when you look at it, is a 1-year starter, a guy that had a good year, and and if you look at the Big Ten bowl record, the Big Ten bowl record was way under 500 this year in 2018 and 19. The Big Ten overall, I would argue, had a down year, right? Overall, they had a down year. he was the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year in the conference, but they overall had a down year. So from a perspective of how much talent there was in the Big Ten to how much talent there was, that he faced on a week-to-week basis, he put up huge numbers in a conference that's incredibly reputable, but it had a down year. So I think from perspective of just having a second-round grade on him, I think he'll probably go somewhere in the 20s. Maybe if he gets lucky, he gets into the 18s, gets into the high teens. But I don't see anybody like trading up to get Haskins. I don't think he's that kind of talent.
Right. I happen to agree with you 100% on that. So 3 quarterbacks, 2 of which were, if you looked at any mocks prior to this season, they had basically 2 of the 3 quarterbacks that I'm going to mention flying off the board within the first 5 picks. Now we fast forward after the college football season. We don't stand in that same state of mind. Drew Lock and Will Grier are the 2 guys that I'm talking about. We'll throw Daniel Jones in there as well because he's most likely to be one of the top 5-6 quarterbacks taken. Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, Will Grier. Which of those 3 guys do you think holds the most value out of those 3 picks?
Locke. Locke was a team captain at Missouri. He was highly recruited out of high school. He has a quicker release than the other 2. And I think he ran really well at the combine in the 40. He checked in at over 6'3". He's kind of a combination between, Grier and Jones. He's kind of an in-between player. And to be honest with you, I think Locke is going to – so the way that people are talking at this point after the combine, Murray's going to go number 1 overall to Arizona. The question's going to be who's going to be the number 2 Q off the board. And the number 2 Q, from what I've been hearing, is it Haskins or is it Locke? And both are similar in stature. Haskins a little bit bigger. Haskins has a little bit more arm talent, but Locke has a lot more film. And film, you can't overemphasize film, right? And I'll tell you why. Scouts dive into film to really get a good gist of an idea of what kind of player you're getting. With Haskins, we've got, 13 games, right? 13, 14 games. Locke's played for 3 years, right? So you've got 2.5 years of game film to really dive in to see his improvement and that stuff. He ended up with a 63% completion percentage this past year, and in a pass-happy offense. But he has the arm. He has arm talent. He's got size, and I think he proved his athleticism at the combine, which I'm not sure that anybody expected him running the 40 that he did.
Right. With Drew Lock, I think the thing that stands out to me the most is that they kind of it's going to go under the radar with like how well he played this year because he was on an 8-5 team. Like obviously Daniel Jones wasn't on a very good Duke team, but if you look at Grier, Haskins, and Murray, they were all on 1-2 loss football teams. And with Drew Lock, his team went 8-5. I think that. And correct me if I'm wrong and tell me if you don't think people really look into this, is that he had a lot of misfortune his way with his, wins and losses as a starting quarterback, which I would assume people do look into. I mean, he had the Georgia game. They played Georgia very, very close. A couple very bad things happened in that game. Obviously, a Georgia player scored a touchdown that probably shouldn't have been scored a touchdown, dropped the ball at the 1-yard line. Mizzou picked it up, which had they had called that right on the field, it probably would have swung the game a little bit because it was only a 2-score game. And then you look at the game against South Carolina where it was an absolute mess. It was raining. It was during like the hurricane season. And obviously Mizzou, they're going to struggle in games like that whenever your best player is Drew Lock. And then an untimed down against Kentucky actually helped Kentucky beat Mizzou off of a pass interference. Do you think that if anything had swung in the right direction for them out of those 3 games, and we're talking about Mizzou actually going 10-3 as a football team instead of 8-5, do you think that there would be more buzz around Drew Lock today?
Sure. I mean, anytime your team wins, the personal accomplishments are helped. But what I would say is, if I don't know, I'm not an NFL general manager, but if Drew Lock is the top 3 quarterbacks off the board, I don't know if his fortune could have been any higher. Now that's saying a lot. He's a top 3 quarterback off the board, but if he is a top 3 quarterback, I don't know that he would have ever been above number 1 or a number 2. Right? Does that make sense? Like,
yes.
Maybe I don't think that, besides all the general managers being in love with Kyler Murray at this particular point, I don't think that there is a surefire, because this is what I would argue. Is Drew Lock a better prospect than Josh Rosen or Sam Darnold?
Probably Rosen.
I personally don't think so. Is Dwayne Haskins a better prospect than Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen? And what I would argue is those players, Rosen and Darnold, are much better prospects than Haskins and Locke. Okay? So, from that perspective, those guys, you just compare, classes to classes. I think Locke was always going to be a 3rd or 4th guy off the board. If he gets to number 3 off the board, because he showed his athleticism at 4.7, I think that is about as high. If he can hop Haskins and Haskins falls down into the late 20s, well, then that's even more glorious.
Right.
But please keep in mind, at this time last year, Baker Mayfield was 6 off the board. 5, 6. So with quarterbacks, the more people dive into their film, the more they get to know people, it can really change how people feel about someone. And truthfully, the matter is this, is that there's no way to know where those guys are going to fall, because there's no way to predict the trades. There's no way to predict on draft night. There's no way to predict who is going to try to go after. Someone might fall in love with Drew Lock and trade up to number 6 and go get him. If they need a quarterback of the future, if you will, and hopefully we can do a discussion after the fact, right? Let's look at it after the fact. We can come back and play some excerpts from this. That I am predicting right now that Haskins will not go any higher than 20 in the NFL draft.
Oh, wow. Okay, I mean, honestly, with your grade and, what people have seen on film, I think that that's a fair assessment. I really do. I don't think that that's anything crazy. Last year we had a huge run on quarterbacks, though. That's the only thing that makes me a little leery of that. Do you think that all the quarterback-needy teams went out and got their guys last year, or do you think that this is something that we're going to see basically every season, where teams just continue to draft quarterbacks in the first round, just taking the best guy available?
Quarterbacks are always overvalued. Always in the NFL draft, because it's the highest paid position. It's the most important position on the field. So there's always going to be quarterbacks. Last year there were 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round of the NFL draft. 5.
That's unbelievable.
So, yeah, and think about that. Outside of Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson played some at the end of the year, and he played okay. He didn't play amazing. Darnold was below par. Rosen played awful. And I'm missing one. Who am I missing? There's one more. I'm missing somebody else. But point being is, of those 5 guys, if you redid the draft today, you would take Baker Mayfield at 1. Lamar Jackson would be your 2nd pick off the board based on their play in 2018.
Right.
But if they're taking 5, so there's only 32 teams, and 5 of them drafted a quarterback last year in the first round. So if you look at that from that perspective, I think the average has been 4 since 2011. There will be 4 quarterbacks, 3 to 4 quarterbacks taken in the first round, and that's just the way of the world. But what I just think, instead of it being like Mahomes got drafted like number 11 overall when the Chiefs traded up for him, I just think instead of those runs being number 1, number 3, number 5, like Darnold went 3 last year, I think from that perspective, so you had a quarterback at 1 and a quarterback at 3, and then Rosen went like 9 or 10 last year, I think.
Yes.
Instead of having 3 quarterbacks taken in the first 10, I think we're going to see a different trend. They might still be taken in the first round, but I think it's going to be Kyler Murray's going to go 1. Haskins is going to go 21, 22. Locke goes 23, 24, 25.
And that could honestly be true because we see a lot of good quarterbacks getting older. So, like, better teams could be looking for that next guy to put out there.
You talk about the Patriots, the Saints. Those are two teams that come off the top of my mind. Even the Broncos just picked up Flacco, but they're still looking for someone because Paxton Lynch obviously has not, worked out.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Kyler Murray's the only guy in the top 15. So we've talked about the big names in the draft. Any dark horses that you see in the mid to later rounds, like a Dak Prescott that you can get, or a Russell Wilson that you can get, maybe 3 to 5 that will have success in the NFL?
I don't know if he's a dark horse or not. He's probably in the top 5 or top 6 or something like that to that extent. But I like the kid the Finley kid from North Carolina State.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if he's technically. I'll give you one that's a little bit off. Let me give you one that's a little bit less than that. Clayton Thorson out of Northwestern. Those are really good catchable ball. He fits the description and the size and the weight. He did have the ACL injury as a junior. Came back as a senior. If he would have come out as a junior, if he wouldn't have gotten hurt, he got hurt in the bowl game. If he would have gotten hurt, he might have been, a top third round. Finley is probably going to go in the second round. But I'll give you one a little bit on the back end of the draft. Clayton Thorson, Northwestern, and I will be surprised if he falls past the 5th. But I like him as a player, as a developmental type prospect with plenty of arm strength, throws a nice ball. He has the size and played in a good offense. And for the most part, Northwestern players, because they're smart, it's a tough university to go to. Fitzgerald does a great job and it holds his players highly accountable. Northwestern players in the NFL tend to understand the rigorous grind that it takes to be successful. So Clayton Thorson, Northwestern.
All right, I actually like that. All right, Dipper, so you can go ahead and catch part 2 of the interview. We will be talking about wide receivers. Very good information there. And if you want, you can just fast forward straight to the interview because that thing is so good. You guys will definitely enjoy it. We talk everything from DK Metcalf to Marquise Brown and whether or not Antonio's antics will affect his draft stock. So, guys, we'll stick on the NFL for a little bit. We actually are having a lot of things happen right in front of our eyes with the NFL. We're in this weird spot where now it's officially not tampering, even though players can't ink their deals until Wednesday. So we'll go ahead and talk about some things that had happened. Guys, Antonio Brown was sent to the Raiders in exchange for a 3rd and 5th round pick in this draft. Does anything in this trade surprise you?
This whole thing kind of surprises. It's odd to me because we got a 3rd and 5th round pick for argument's sake to vote a top 5 receiver in the NFL. And you gotta think, could they not get a 1st round pick out of anybody other than Buffalo for Antonio Brown refused to go to? And this is a fucking power move for Antonio Brown. He literally just said, no, I'm not gonna go play there. And they didn't get a 1st round pick for him. They got a 3rd or 5th round pick because teams got in their mind, we can give the Steelers the world, but everybody might not show up. We can't pay him. So that means there are only 2 or 3 teams that could afford him or were going to pay him. They knew who they were, and the Raiders executed. And John Gruden did a really good job on this one.
I got a lot of thoughts about this, and it's just, people are talking about, good job, AB, on betting on yourself. You made things happen, this and that. But just, maybe, I don't know, maybe the Steelers didn't pursue it the right way. Maybe Oakland's not as smart. Well, maybe Oakland's just not smart, period. But to me, it's interesting because you signed a guy in Antonio Brown who's 31. You just signed him to big money. He, and Derek Carr, too, he's on a big money contract now, too. Listen, those guys are in win-now mentality. And the thing is, they've got a lot of draft picks coming up. So you've got a core group of guys who are really talented being paired with another core group of guys. And they're just going to be on different timelines. AB and Derek Carr and the coaching staff are in win now. You draft a guy who's going to be a rookie. He's looking at 2 to 3 years before he can really find his niche in his role in the league and try to win then. So you look at this, they had trouble with it in LA. You know, the Lakers, they bring in LeBron, he's ready to win now. Magic's ready to win now, but Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Kuzma, they're not ready to go yet. I think you're going to see a lot of the same thing in Oakland. It's just a peculiar move to me. They had a direction, they were unloading cap space, getting picks, looking to move forward, and now it's like they're bending and folding their timeline and just adding things that don't make sense to me. So this whole thing is odd. Of course, you want Antonio Brown, and they got him for a great price as far as the draft picks they paid, but it just didn't make sense with the direction that the team was going.
I actually agree with you 100% with everything that you had said there. And if you look at the Raiders, towards the end of the season last year, we were questioning whether or not Derek Carr is even going to be the starting quarterback for this team next year, because there seemed to be just something weird about the Derek Carr and John Gruden relationship there. Mm-hmm. And if this team goes out and takes that number 3 overall pick and takes a quarterback, you're even going to put yourself further into the situation that you're talking, Fletcher.
Right.
Where you have a quarterback who needs to develop and learn and, obviously spend a year or two in the NFL before he gets accustomed to the game, where you have all these other old guys on the team that are ready to win now who've basically been in the playoffs their whole entire career. Now, if you look at just the bare bones of what the Raiders did, if you give me the option of a first-round pick or a third and a fifth, I'm going to take the first-round pick. If you give me the option of Amari Cooper or Antonio Brown, I'm going to take Antonio Brown. So if you look at just the bare bones of the trade, both the Amari Cooper trade and this AB trade to piggyback off of it to get yourself that number 1 guy, it's genius. Like, they seriously turned Amari Cooper, a third and a fifth, to Antonio Brown and a first-round pick. So excellent job there, but it just makes me wonder what in the hell the direction of this team is going to be for the next 2 or 3 years, while you are using basically the rest of Antonio Brown's prime, while you're trying to get your younger players to develop and get better for the future. I think they're going to be in a really, really weird spot, and it's not going to be surprising to me in the least if the Raiders next year are another 5 or even just 6-win team.
Well, no one's talking about, though, how good Lomar and Antonio Brown is going to be for all these young guys.
Oh, yeah. They'll be able to step in and learn a ton from Antonio Brown.
Everyone's looking over this. Like, listen, here's how you make an NFL team bow at your feet.
Yes, I absolutely love it. And the thing that drives me crazy about Antonio Brown with this whole scenario is that he wanted out of Pittsburgh so bad with a Super Bowl head coach in Mike Tomlin. Even though I give Mike Tomlin a ton of shit, he's still a phenomenal coach. Yeah. He wanted out away from Big Ben, who's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. And, I'm not saying Big Ben's a great guy, but he's a damn good quarterbaff.
He was better than Derek Carr last year.
Yes, you are choosing Derek Carr, who's coming off of a couple really questionable years, and John Gruden, who's coming off of one of the most questionable years as an NFL head coach. This makes no sense. It was obviously all about the money for a guy who said, first, this is strictly business. Then it was about personal relationships with the players. None of this makes any sense. The guy got paid. That's the bare bones of it. So what do you guys think that Antonio Brown's career as a Raider, how will it go?
Kind of like Randy Moss's. Stats will be a little better because the NFL is just different now, but teams won't be good. I mean, he'll probably have 1,000-yard years, but fuck, everyone 1,000-yard years now if you're number 1 guy.
Yeah, he's definitely going to get plenty of catches, plenty of targets, plenty of touchdowns, plenty of yards. He's going to get plenty of whatever he wants. There's no doubt about that. But this whole thing just reeks of dysfunction and failure. And so that's all I'm going to expect until I see otherwise for the Oakland Raiders.
Reeks of it.
Reeks of it. I can smell it from here. As soon as I heard the trade rumors, I'm like, what are you doing going after Antonio? What's the point in that? I don't understand that.
No, it makes no sense in my opinion. And if you look at here's my bold take on Antonio Brown's future as a Raider. Since 2013, Antonio Brown has roughly averaged 1,500 yards and about 11 touchdowns since 2013. That's just his average, 1,500 with 11 scores. He will never eclipse either one of those numbers ever again in the NFL. Probably, even just outside of his career as a Raider at this point, I don't think he's ever going to do it again. He's never going to be in a situation where there's a quarterback that's going to throw him the ball 15 times, that's going to throw him the ball downfield almost to a fault, and just
rely on that.
Huh?
Well, too.
Yes, well.
Doing all those things well.
Yes, you have to be able to do those things well. The wide receiver is the most reliant on a different position in the NFL, maybe outside of a quarterback with their offensive line. And I think that this is going to go very, very poorly. I think Antonio Brown's just going to be another guy for the rest of his career. Just another, decent number one wide receiver. Mark him up for 1,200 yards and 6 touchdowns next year. So we'll go ahead and talk about Nick Foles, actually. It came out today that it's basically a foregone conclusion that he will be signing with the Jaguars. I know they came out and said that he has signed 4 years, $88 million, but he can't actually ink that until tomorrow. Can Nick Foles bring this team back to the playoff caliber that we saw just a year ago?
He definitely can. If he plays like he did when he comes in mid-season, he absolutely can, because then the defense will actually give a shit, and the offense will score more than 10 points in a game. Will he, though? I don't know. The AFC South's really good, Texans and the Colts, and it's going to be hard to get 12 or 13 wins in that division. Or even 10 wins in that division would be tough.
Well, he's definitely, I think he's a better option than Blake Bortles and Cody Kessler. I don't think there's much argument with that. But, Doug Peterson, he came from Andy Reid, and you know how smart of a coach Andy Reid is and how smart of a coach Doug Peterson is. Even their offensive coordinator, Frank Wright, is now a head coach for the Colts. Their offense is awesome too. So you look at him leaving a really good situation. I think he's going to do better than the 2 quarterbacks they had there already. But to think he's going to go down to Jacksonville and just somehow light it up all of a sudden, come on. I don't see that happening.
No, and if you look at the skill players around him, I think that the running back play in Philly is better than Leonard Fournette for 6 games.
Yeah.
I think that the wide receivers there in Philly were better than what they have in Jacksonville. Basically, Jacksonville has a ton of misfit toys, like a ton of number 3 wide receivers. They don't have that number 1 guy like he had in Alshon. Right. They don't have a Trey Burton, he had Trey Burton just 2 seasons ago, or even a Trey. Oh man, Zach Ertz. You're falling off my mind there. He doesn't have any players that are the caliber that he had with the Eagles, which I think he could accredit a ton of his success to. And you look at the offensive line, Blake Bortles is a lot more mobile than what Nick Foles is, and Blake Bortles struggled a ton behind that offensive line. So you think that if you're bringing in a guy like Nick Foles, who doesn't have that same big body build like Blake Bortles does, that's able to take all those hits, that's able to move around in the pocket as good as what he did, maybe be able to scamper for 6-7 yards whenever he has to, I don't think it's going to go as swimmingly as what everybody thinks whenever they just look at, this team just got a Super Bowl MVP. I don't think it's going to go like that. I think that the Jaguars are going to be okay. I think that they lost quite a bit on defense over the last year and a half. I think this is going to be a team that we're going to look at next year 7-9, 6-10. I think at best they can go 9-7, especially in that division, which has gotten really tough over the last year.
No disrespect to Nick Foles, but he really. I've seen him in Kansas City and I've seen him in St. Louis too. He really had kind of a perfect scenario for those 2 years or however many years he was there in Philadelphia. Even a little while during that first stint too with Andy Reid in that second half of the season there, he really just found himself in 2 really awesome situations. And you're not going to have that in Jacksonville. You're just not.
No, I completely agree with that. Pew, 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 pew. We're playing darts, baby. So guys, it is our time to play some darts. Leighton, what is the game for us today?
Once again, it's a new dart game. We're really throwing news at walls, hoping something sticks. No name for the game here, but I'll tell you the rules of the game.
You put in a lot of thought to it. I like it so far.
We're all going to throw our darts at the same time, or at the same time, like back to back to back. And each number is going to... Each number...
Not at the same time at all. Sorry, go ahead.
Consecutively. And then each number represents a scenario. And we got to put those scenarios in chronological order to when they can happen.
As long as there aren't any decisions where I have to choose between killing 3 kids and 1 adult, I think I can handle this game.
Nope,
yes.
We're good to go.
Okay.
All the scenarios I came up with are very unlikely to could happen in like 20 years. So it should be fun.
Okay, so we all 3 throw these at the same exact time?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll have 3 rounds of this then. I see that there's a lot of thought.
No, it's just 1 round, and we discuss the 3 things.
Let's do 2 rounds of it if we like the first one.
Okay.
All right. So, all 3 throw, and we have a 1, a 7, and a 19.
Okay.
19 should be good.
A 1 is the Bears win a Super Bowl.
Well, that's first on the list.
Number 7 is LeBron gets elected into the Hall of Fame. And 19 is John Gruden signs an extension with the Oakland Raiders.
Wow. I told you 19 would be good. When you get to the bottom of the list, you start pulling some bullshit out. I knew that was going to be good.
Man, I got bullshit 1 through 20 on this.
Yeah, LeBron getting to the Hall of Fame.
Well,
What a bunch of
it
bullshit.
has to be scattered out some.
Okay.
Alright, so I'll go first, I guess. I'm going to have LeBron go to the Hall of Fame first.
Can he just get elected while he's still playing?
No, he cannot. That means the Bears will not Super Bowl within the next 10 to 12 years.
Wow. Okay.
And then last, I'll put John Gruden getting an extension because he still has 9 years left of that thing. So if he does get one, it's at least 9 years away. Or probably 8 years away.
My turn?
Yeah.
So I got LeBron getting elected into the Hall of Fame. That's obviously going to happen. And then I got John Gruden getting the extension before the Bears win the Super Bowl still.
Oh, wow.
I got to see it before I can believe it. Hey,
Right.
I didn't think John Gruden would sign a 10-year, $100 million deal. So I mean, to say he could get an extension, I mean, hell, come on.
Yeah, he'll pull the Antonio Brown. He'll have like 7 years left, and he'll be like, "I want more guaranteed money. Let's sign a new extension." I think
Yeah,
number
count.
one, since LeBron can't get elected into the Hall of Fame before the next Super Bowl, I think that I think that the Bears will win a Super Bowl before LeBron gets elected into the Hall of Fame. Then LeBron will get his Hall of Fame nod about 9-10 years later, and then John Gruden, he will never sign an extension in the NFL. This is his last coaching job. It'll be over before the start of the 2023 season. So I have the Bears, LeBron, then John Gruden.
Alright.
I just have no faith in the Bears.
Thank you,
Let's do that
Parker.
again. That was fun.
That was fun. All right. So,
Okay.
all three, throw. We have a 6, a 10, and a 12.
I was
Okay.
hoping for a 20.
6 is the Knicks win a title.
Wow.
Number 10 is...
Wait a second. Does James... We should have on here as the fourth option, James Dolan sells the team.
Okay.
Seriously.
The 10 is LeAngelo Ball plays in an NBA game. Sorry. LeAngelo Ball is on an NBA roster.
Okay.
The two things to that though, he has to dress and cannot be a two-way contract.
Wow.
And 12, Brandon admits the process is a failure.
Oh. And then James Dolan sells the team.
I was, as we kept going, I was like, well, that'll be last. Well, that'll be last. Well, that'll be last.
I tell you, dude, bullshit all the way down.
Fletch, we're throwing in James Dolan sells the team on this.
All right.
That'd be full. Let's see, you can go first on this one.
So the first one I think would happen would be James Dolan sells the team. The next one would be the Knicks win a title. The next one, I just don't think Brandon would ever say that the process was a failure no matter what.
No.
So I'm going to go
I
with
know.
Angelo Ball, and then I'm going Brandon.
Yes.
I have the same order.
That's the exact same order as me, because 3 of those things will never happen in my life. I could make the argument that James Dolan will not sell the team also, so really 4 things that might never happen in our lifetimes. But I think that there's a chance that, something weird happens to where James Dolan has to sell the team, and that's the only way any of these 4 things will ever happen.
The Knicks could win a title at some point.
Not with James Dolan running the ship.
Yeah, the only Rocket. I don't think. Here's what I came down to. All those things could happen, but they won 50 games last year. They just traded for Tobias Harris. I think Rocket would hang on to those 2 before he ever admitted the process was a failure.
I agree.
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
do agree.
So that was actually fun.
That
We're
was
gonna have
good.
to bring that game back. I really like that game. So now, guys, I promised it to you at the beginning of the show. It is our time to break down the NCAA basketball conference tournaments. We're going to break down basically everything that I would look at as like a major college basketball conference, which luckily for us, there's more than 5. So we'll go ahead and talk about first. Since we're in the Midwest, the Big Ten basketball champion. Guys, who do we like?
Okay, so I have the Michigan Wolverines winning the Big Ten championship.
Of course you do.
I know they haven't been good as of late, but back to play basketball at a private school. my coach told us that it's really hard to beat a team 3 times. Michigan State beat Michigan twice already. Michigan's a really good team, and I don't see it happening for the 3rd time.
It's hard for me to say. I mean, Michigan State's impressed me this year. So is Purdue. Purdue could beat a lot of teams, but I think it's hard to say. It's between, in my opinion, it's between Michigan State and Purdue, and I think I'm going to have to go with Michigan State.
In my opinion, so there's 2 things in this basketball conference that I trust. I trust that I fully trust. Like any day out, I trust this to absolutely work. That's Wisconsin's defense and Purdue's offense. Unfortunately, I don't think that Wisconsin will be able to put up enough points in order to, advance deep into this tournament. And plus, being a 4 seed, you have to play the 5 right off the bat, then play the 1. I don't think that they're going to be able to advance far. For Purdue, I really like Purdue's chances in this tournament. They're 17-3 in their last 20 games. You look at a team like Michigan, who's struggled very, very much as of late. They're 9-5 down the last stretch. And Michigan State plays Indiana in the opening round, and Michigan State is 0-2 against Indiana, which seems to be their really only kryptonite in the Big Ten. So I honestly am predicting a scenario where we have Purdue win the title, and on the opposite side, I have Indiana and Maryland actually being in that semifinal, which would make things very, very difficult for people that are seeding the NCAA tournament. I think that'll be very interesting. So for each one of these, we're going to give you guys a dark horse team that we kind of like to maybe upset some teams, a team that is not in the top 4 that has a chance to either play for a title or win the title. Guys, who is your team or teams that you see in the Big Ten that can do so?
I'm going to go with Indiana, and just because we've seen before how much one player can do for a college basketball team, and if Will Langford does just get super hot, he could carry this team over to the championship.
Absolutely.
If not win it.
Before I give my dark horses here, I just want to say that punches got thrown in the Raptors-Cavs game, and Serge Ibaka and Marquise Chris apparently landed blows on each other after Serge Ibaka grabbed Marquise Chris around the throat. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
In basketball, you don't see many fights actually happen. You see a whole lot of, yeah, come here, or where are you going, that kind of thing. They actually landed punches on each other, it says here, and Ibaka grabbed him by the throat. So I know Ibaka does boxing for his cardio in the offseason, so I'm sure Ibaka would probably wreck him, but that was kind of cool to read.
Yeah, Marquise Chris is like 6'10", 114 pounds.
Yeah, and Ibaka's not, so...
No, he's a massive human being.
I got, I really like, there are a couple teams down further in the Big Ten Conference I like. I mean, Minnesota, I like them the least. And then I really like the Iowa Hawkeyes. And then on top of that, Maryland, depending on where they, who they run into in the first, second round. But then also Wisconsin. Wisconsin, I don't know where they're going to land. I mean, they could have a good tournament, get seeded highly. They could have a bad tournament, fall out of the top 25, and get seeded poorly. So, I mean, just it's hard to say what a true dark horse is, really. But I like the Iowa Hawkeyes, and I like the Minnesota Golden Gophers as well.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat with Leighton here. I know Indiana really struggled against Big Ten competition. Unfortunately, that's who they play in the tournament. But they've had success against Michigan State. And they get Michigan State, in that second round if they're able to get past the first round. And I don't hate their chances in that game. Another team that I really like is Maryland. And basically because of Bruno Fernando. Like, this guy is an absolute stud. He's 6'10", and he's about as wide as he is tall. And he's built very, very good. He's averaging 14 and 10. I mean, he's an absolute force down low. And if he gets things rolling, he really cannot be stopped down low. So I actually told you earlier, I have Indiana and Maryland in my semifinals there. So one of those teams will ultimately be a dark horse that makes it to the championship game. So guys, we'll go ahead and go to the Big 12. Who do you guys like for your Big 12 champion?
I'm going to go Texas Tech. They've been the best team in that conference basically all year, most consistent. They never really showed a major hiccup for a long enough period of time for me to think they weren't the best team in that conference. I think Texas Tech just doesn't blow the tournament away, but not really too much of a challenge.
Yeah, they're actually tied for first with Kansas State, but I mean, Texas Tech, they are just hotter than a firecracker right now. They've won 9 in a row, so I gotta go with Texas Tech to win their own tournament.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be Texas Tech by brutal annihilation. I mean, one thing that's always been a knock of Chris Beard's teams is that they don't really have that guy that you can roll the ball to and say, go score me a bucket. And that they have that in Jared Culver now. Like, watching him the other night against Iowa State was very, very similar to how you see excellent guard play in the NCAA tournament, where if a team has went completely cold and they need a bucket, this guy can go out there and put buckets together. He can score on 3, 4, 5 straight possessions for you and make it look pretty easy. I mean, it was an NCAA tournament atmosphere in Ames, Iowa, which is a very tough place to play, even whenever Iowa State's bad. And he scored 31 points on 63% shooting. I do like some other teams to maybe cause some noise, but I think Texas Tech will win this thing by a landslide. So, guys, do you guys have a dark horse in this tournament? Anybody seated outside of the top 4 that you think can maybe win this thing or make it to the championship round?
No, dude, I really don't. Like, you said they could make noise. I think it could be some noise made. But look at the teams like Baylor, Iowa State, Texas, Oklahoma. They all said they go against them. Like, Texas, they got good coaching, talking smart, but they're playing like shit. Baylor hadn't played good in over a month. Iowa State can only win game is at home. I don't know if Oklahoma is really that good of a team. So I think this tournament would definitely be won by Texas Tech, Kansas State, or Kansas, without a shadow of a doubt.
Oh, I definitely could see Iowa State winning the Big 12. It'd be a stretch for sure, but that's what a dark horse is. So I could definitely see Iowa State doing it, and for this whole reason that they can get hotter than any team in this tournament right now, where they shoot the three. So for that, I have to say Iowa State as my dark horse.
I think Iowa State has the offense that can win them a national championship, and they have a defense that could give up 90 to a mid-major at any point. Like. They are very, very polished offensively. I think that they will make a run. I think that Iowa State will actually be playing in the title game against Texas Tech. But if Iowa State can't beat Texas Tech on their home floor, they're not going to beat them in Kansas City. So, Big East, guys, this is wide open at this point. Who do you see winning the title in the Big East?
I'm going to go with Villanova. Even though they're definitely dying for Villanova, put their standards as of late, Jay Wright just knows how to get his players ready to go for these tournaments, and I think that they're going to win the Big East tournament.
Yeah, this is one of Jay Wright's younger teams that he's had in a long time. Usually he's just got guards and forwards that are juniors and seniors all over the place, but this is a younger team he has, and for that, I'm going to go with the Marquette Golden Eagles, and one guy's going to carry him, and that's Marcus Howard. So I'm picking Marquette to win this tournament.
See, I'm actually picking Marquette as well. They have to figure it out eventually. Guys, they haven't won a basketball game since March 23rd. Like, they have won about as cold as you can. And I really think that it all circles around Marcus Howard. Like, he's been struggling as of late. He hasn't seemed as settled in as what he was at the beginning of the season, where we were seeing a 40-point game just about every month from this guy. I think that he's finally going to settle in, get the Hauser twins involved. They're going to hit some big shots for this team. Ultimately, I think Marquette will win the Big East title. Guys, I said it before we even talked about the tournament. This thing is pretty wide open. Are there any dark horses that you like?
I know a couple, but I'll talk about Creighton. They won 5 straight, haven't lost in almost a month. And all their games, minus their win against Marquette, like 66 points, they put up like 79, 80, 90 points in every single game. So they're playing really good right now, and they're scoring a ton of points on top of just playing good defense.
I mean, I don't really have any true sleepers in this. Seton Hall and Georgetown are both, good teams, but they're going to be top 4 seeds. I can't really see anybody that really gets me excited, really. Butler's been down. Xavier's been down. Creighton, I mean, they've been good as of late, but before that, I mean, they were playing 500 ball. So there's just no real team that gets me excited. Really, this whole tournament just doesn't get me excited, to be honest with you.
Yeah. The one team that I think gets me excited that's outside of the top 4 seeds is St. John's. St. John's is actually one of the most fun I have watching basketball. Like, they have some superb athleticism on their team. They have guys that are ranked in the top 100 at one point or another. Some of them have transferred in. I don't know if any of them were actually just like straight up recruited to St. John's. It doesn't matter how they get there, it's how they finish. But I think this is one of those teams that have kind of played below their talent level for the majority of the season. And whenever the tournament comes around, I think they could potentially get hot and put some wins together. I actually think that the winner of that Marquette St. John's game will win the title. And with the talent that St. John's has, it's as good as any other team out there. If they put it all together for 4 straight games, I will not be surprised in the least if this team is not walking away with the title. So guys, SEC. Oh, by the way, Big East. Isn't it funny how, like, back in the day, the Big East was, like, such a grinded-out team, or a grinded-out conference, and now you have,
was
like...
my favorite conference until
yes, like, they used to just be so grinded out, defensive, punches thrown in almost every tournament. Now they're just, like, all out there just shooting threes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Requiem for the Big East, that 30 for 30, was probably the greatest 30 for 30 I've ever watched in my entire life, and I wish that was one thing that never changed, was the Big East.
Yeah, that was definitely a good conference. So, guys, we'll go ahead and go to the SEC, a conference that could potentially have 3 number 2 seeds in the NCAA tournament. Guys, who will be your champion in this tournament?
I'm going to University of Kentucky. I think they're the best team in the conference, and LSU's coach just got spin indefinitely. Tennessee's a really good team. I know in Tennessee is the home state, whether it'll be a home game for them. But UK fans travel as good as any fans in the country. I don't think UK, and this might be the best tournament out of every conference we have.
Oh, it's going to be a good one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the last time I was on the show, I talked about the Tennessee Volunteers, and how I thought they were the best team in the country, and they've just really had hard sledding ever since. I'm gonna go with Kentucky too. They're tied for the second best record of the conference with Tennessee, but against teams in the AP poll and the coaches poll for top 25 rankings, they have a winning record in both of those. They're 5-3 and 6-3 against ranked opponents, which is what they're going to go against. All down the stretch of this SEC tournament. That's best in their league. So I'm going to stick with Kentucky on this one. And I know saying that might curse them, and Tennessee might go ahead and win now. But the way I'm looking at things right now, I think Kentucky is the one who's going to win the SEC.
See, I'm going to stay on Tennessee. This is a team that I said had to get it kicking defensively in order to obviously take the next step and potentially win a national title. I know that they've struggled, but over this 3-3 stretch, the weird thing about Tennessee is that they've almost been trying to reinvent themselves defensively. In the Ken Palm ranking prior to the Kentucky game, this team was ranked in the mid-50s defensively. Now, since they've struggled lately, but they have also been stepping up defensively, they're ranked 27th defensively. So they're taking huge strides defensively. And I think that they... I don't know if I think. I hope that they put it all together and put a couple games together and are able to beat Kentucky, or able to beat potentially an LSU or a Florida or whoever they have to play in the title game. But this team, offensively, defensively, whenever they put games together, they're better than any other team in this conference, and they haven't lost a game inside the state of Tennessee this season. I think that the Volunteers are going to win the SEC title. Guys, any dark horses in this tournament? This thing is top to bottom loaded.
Well, fortunately for seeding and tiebreak purposes, Auburn is the number 5 seed, so they're going to be my dark horse team. They just beat Tennessee. The only team that not be in the conference have been LSU and Kentucky, but they play within 2 points of Kentucky and 5 points of LSU, so they can definitely go out there and beat both those teams on the right day.
Yeah, I've got the sleeper of sleepers over here. I've got the Vanderbilt Commodores. Now they
have not won a conference game all season.
They are 0-18 in the SEC. That blows my mind. They won 9 games all year. So that's pitiful. That's sad.
They're 0-18. Oh man.
Yeah, they were bad in conference this year. That was one of my little riding teams. I would pick whatever team they were playing in the SEC after they started off 0-10.
They've lost 19 straight games.
Watch them catch fire and make it to the title game.
I know, it's crazy. I was looking up and down the conference at different things. I'm like 0-18, 9-22, lost 19 in a row.
They were once 9-3.
They lost their last game at a conference and then just shit the bed every single time in their conference. My dark horse, Mississippi State Bulldogs. They've got some talent on their team. Really, the whole SEC is like, they play a very tough physical style of football, and they pretty much just do the same thing in basketball too. And they're just really tough teams all the way up and down in this conference. And I'm going with the Mississippi State Bulldogs.
I actually like that a lot. That team is really tough, and they played well throughout stretches of the season. I actually have in my semifinal at the top half of the bracket, I have Florida and Auburn playing each other. I think Florida is a very good team, and they have something on LSU for some odd reason. They beat LSU once this year, took them to overtime in the second game. They can play with LSU, and if you look at how Arizona last year responded once their coach got into some turmoil, some things came out, and they were kind of in limbo with who their coach was going to be, Arizona came out flat. LSU, I think, is going to do the same in this conference tournament, and I think that Florida is going to be able to beat them and advance and play Auburn in this semifinal of this tournament, which could really open things up. And both those teams are, in our definition, a dark horse outside of the top 4 seeds. So I like both Florida and Auburn.
I think I figured out where Vanderbilt's season went off the rails.
Whenever their top 10 guard got hurt.
No. On January 23rd.
They were just fine then, Drake.
They were fine.
On January
They were fine. Don't worry about it. Oh, man.
You know that meme of the dog whenever everything around him's on fire?
Yeah, that's with them.
That was Vanderbilt.
But on January 23rd, they played Tennessee at home and lost by 5 points. Now, the game went to overtime.
Yes, they were winning.
They're pretty exhausted. They lost the next 2 games by a combined 66 points, and that was it.
That was it. Yeah, no, they were actually
against Tennessee.
I think with like a minute and a half left, they were beating Tennessee, which is so bizarre. How awesome would it have been if their only conference win would have been against Tennessee?
You know, they probably went to the locker room and blamed each other for who did what to lose that close game, and then the next thing you know, it just spiraled out of control, and they get their asses handed to them the next 2.
Yeah, it definitely spiraled out of control.
They went by 6 with a minute left to go in the second half.
I don't know when that game was, but things definitely spiraled out of control before then.
Yes, to lose 18 straight conference games.
I mean, come on.
Well, okay, well, I mean, they lost from that game on. They lost 14 straight.
Hey, listen.
That wasn't helping anything.
This is what happened. They lose their last game out of conference. The coach tells them, "Don't worry, boys. Put this one behind us. We'll start moving into conference play." Boy, they fucking did too. They lost 15 in a row.
Dude, I wish I had the film of the post game speech that the coach gave them, because you just need to play that for every coach whenever they're about to go into tournament play and say the exact opposite of what this guy says.
He probably, you know what? All honesty, what probably happened was he says, you thought it was bad playing them. Well, you're fucked going into conference now.
Yes.
You're going to win a game.
You're in hot water now, boys. All right, so we'll go ahead and go to one of the marquee basketball conferences in the world, if not the best, the ACC.
There's only one league better than the ACC, and that's the NBA.
Yes, I would actually have to agree with you at this point. Guys, this tournament is absolutely loaded. I mean, just listen to the quarterfinal matchups that we could potentially have. You could have Virginia taking on NC State, Virginia Tech taking on Florida, UNC playing Louisville, and Duke playing Syracuse. Those are all blue bloods that you could be getting in the quarterfinals of this tournament. Guys, who do we think will win this tournament?
This is really, really hard to pick between.
I bet you $100 Leighton does not say Duke.
It's really, really, really hard to
I bet he
pick
doesn't say Virginia either.
one of these teams. But looking at Duke's bench, where they've been all season without Zion, and how good he comes back, I hate how Virginia plays and a team gets hot and they will lose. So go with North Carolina. North Carolina is the best team in the conference, and Luke May is going to go for his record 400 straight ACC game.
Luke May's good to go. Oh, yeah. It's tough because you look at Virginia, you look at North Carolina. I mean, it's really going to come down to those two, in my opinion. Even with Duke's situation, I mean, they could win it, sure, but the way things are looking right now, I think it comes down between Virginia and North Carolina. And I'm gonna have to go with the same. Virginia is really impressing me this year. This is not your typical Virginia kind of teams, but the same reason that I gave for Kentucky to win the SEC is the same reason I'm going to go for North Carolina against the AP Top 25 and the USA Today Top 25. They have a combined 16 wins against ranked opponents, and that's what you're going to face in this ACC tournament. They have a top team. They have, for years now, since they've been with Roy Williams, they've defended well. They play with a fast pace, and they hit the offensive glass like nobody's business. They always lead the nation in offensive rebounding. So I'm going to have to go with North Carolina, even though I could see Virginia winning it. But for everything that I just said, I think North Carolina will win the ACC tournament.
So Virginia, I am picking Virginia. I cannot pick against them. They're 36-3. Including conference tournament play in the last 2 years. 36-3, that is unprecedented in any conference, especially being in the ACC. I think this team is different than what we've seen teams for Virginia in the past. Like, they have three guys that can score the basket at any given point. They can shoot the three ball really well. But with that being said, this is one of the more impressive UNC teams I've seen in a while, and they've won a tournament within the last 2 years. So I think it's going to come down to Virginia, UNC. Both of these teams I could honestly see winning the national title. I just give the edge to Virginia just because they've been so dominant in this conference over the last 2 years.
Brandon actually voted his pick. He says Duke because Duke.
Okay, all right. I like the right-in pick. Guys, do you see any real dark horse out of this tournament?
Yeah, the dark horse is every year, and that's Syracuse.
Yes.
Every year, Syracuse just plays, very mediocre that regular season, just good enough to make the tournaments, and then the zone team just can't figure it out. And I think it's always possible that they're just going to win any game because of that. So Syracuse is always a dark horse for every tournament ever.
Yeah, it's funny. Jim Boeheim, he's talked shit about LeBron here, in the past year and a half or so. But the thing is, his teams play an awfully lot like LeBron does now. I mean, they ride on cruise control during the regular season and then find an extra gear somehow in conference play or the postseason, any kind of postseason play. So I actually had Syracuse picked as well. I mean, they're almost got 20 wins here. The zone, like Leighton said, can really fuck with people at times. I don't know why, because you've seen it for the past 40 years or 30 years now, and you played against it at least twice, I guess, during the regular season, but it does that to people. So I'm going with Syracuse too, actually. It was either them or the Wolfpack, and I decided Syracuse.
Yeah, in this tournament, I think that the top 4 seeds will be playing in the semifinals. I think that this is almost as big as a lock as anything else, but if there was a team that would sneak up and bite somebody, you have to say it's Syracuse, especially since they've already beat Duke once with Zion. You're going to get a new look. They beat Duke without Zion, lost to Duke without Zion. Now that Zion's back, they'll beat him again. So there's always the potential there with Syracuse, so they could be the dark horse that ultimately walks away with this thing.
If all of the dark horses we've mentioned so far, the one with Syracuse here for the ACC, that is the one that I am by far least confident in.
I agree. I didn't even feel comfortable saying Syracuse. I think it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I mean, it could be 5 just because the 5th seeded team is like ranked 16th or 17th in the country as well. But, it's 1 through 5 somewhere.
Yeah. So, guys, we'll go ahead and go to the Pac-12, maybe the biggest joke out of any of these conferences. Who do you think is going to win? And just go ahead and give me your dark horse if you have one, because this conference is terrible.
Yeah, it's really bad conference, but I'm going to pick Washington. Out of all the crap, they're definitely the most shiny gold crap. But the Vice is beating top 25 ranked teams. They're 0-3 against those teams, but fortunately for them, none of those teams play in their conference. So that's easy. Our dark horse team, Drake, is the Oregon Ducks. They're hot. They've won 4 straight games, and they're going to do it for ball.
Hashtag do it for ball. I got Washington winning as well. They're the only team in the conference not to lose at least 6 games. That conference is dog shit, and the only thing that's saving the conference is having Bill Walton come on and do whatever it is he does during games. So I don't even have a sleeper. I guess maybe Utah, maybe Colorado. I don't know. I really don't care, to be honest with you.
No, I don't either. I have Washington winning this thing, and I'm praying that Arizona State loses in the first round so they're out of the tournament. We cannot have more than one Pac-12 in this tournament out of the 68 teams that make it. Otherwise, it's a complete joke. I looked at the Ken Palms the other day, and they have no teams in the top 40. They have one team that's even in the top 55. I know it's just a statistical measurement, but let's get real. It actually means something.
I'll give you some Pac-12 news here. The USC Trojans have been rumored to offer LaMelo Ball a scholarship. They have to go through a lot of legal battles with signing LaMelo Ball just due to amateur status. LaMelo Ball signed an agent, which is strike one, but the NCAA is working on rule changes to where they can allow quote-unquote elite players to have agents. And so in the way the determining body for how you determine a player is elite is with USA Basketball, so that makes about as much sense as fucking nothing. But then you can't play for money. That's another stipulation. They're going to try to argue that He never played for money in Lithuania. I don't know how. I don't even know what happened in Lithuania other than that they played a few games of basketball here and there. And then the one that's going to be hard to overcome is the shoe. He's already got his own shoe and everything. And what they're going to try to say is that's a family business and not, a player image kind of thing, using your own brand or likeness to profit. It's a family business. So that's what they're going to bring up, the deal they're going to bring up with the NCAA. But
I hope they get it done.
Oh, dude, I would love. Here's the thing. I said we were talking about this maybe 2 months ago, 3 months ago. You were like, who would want to bring LaMelo Ball and all that fucking circus with it? And I was like, well, a team that usually underperforms is in a fairly large city and is looking to make a splash. And USC 8-10, fucking 15-16, bottom of the Pac-12 in Los Angeles. They could be a team to make that kind of splash. I hope it happens, just because it'd be fun to watch.
Well, hey, it's a large market team, man.
Yeah,
they got the cap space; they can do it. Hey, I'll tell you,
Los Angeles.
I'll tell you what, though. My dream scenario is that LeVar Ball becomes part of the USA Basketball, becomes the head coach, and then deems his own son eligible to play after he probably paid his own son a shitload of money.
I just want to see LeVar Ball become the head coach of the LA Lakers.
Yes,
LiAngelo, get a bench spot, boy.
That's
I want to see him pull off the same role that Doc Rivers has with the Clippers. That's what I want to see. Fucking Coach GM.
LeVar Ball averages like 48 minutes a game.
Never lost.
Never lost.
Oh, I love it.
All right, so we'll go ahead.
I just love that I'm getting able to live during the same time as the ball shit.
Oh, yeah, me too. It's so great. I can't wait to have to explain it to somebody in like 15, 20 years because this is going to be the most bizarre shit ever. It's like, do you have a minute? Sit on down.
Seriously.
So, guys, we'll go ahead and talk about the AAC. Who do you guys have as your champion here? This could potentially be a team that has a conference that has 4 teams make it to the tournament. So who do you have?
I'm going to pick Houston. I think that...
What?
I think that from the top perspective, they're just probably the best team in the conference. But for Cincinnati, though, I've seen Cincinnati make a lot of games really ugly and unbearable to watch. But they can win, though, like 59 58 fucking games.
Okay, sorry. I just kept thinking about that fucking LeVar Ball shit. I have Houston winning this. It's pretty obvious. They're about to win 30 games, so Houston's definitely my pick to win it all. My sleeper. You thought Vanderbilt was a sleeper. Listen to this one. I've got the Tulane Green Wave as the dark horse. They are 0-18 in conference. They have won 4 games all year. They've lost 20 fucking games in a row.
Did you see how they lost most recently against Wichita State?
No, I'm not watching the Tulane Green in my free time.
Buzzer beater. Wichita State hit a 3 buzzer beater to beat them.
They were so close. They're like the Mud Dogs from Waterboy with fucking Adam Sandler and shit. They fucking lose on a buzzer beater.
They have heart. They have heart.
God, I hope so, because they don't have much else. I don't have a real sleeper in this one, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm going to go with UCF winning this thing. I think there's something to be said. I'm a really big fan of, like, basically, they're poor man's Purdue. They have a guy who's taller than 7'3", and then they have 2 guards that can score just about every single time down the floor. And I kind of like that style of basketball. You throw Taco Fall out there for about 25 minutes a game. He gets you a good 11 and 7, and he creates a challenge that a lot of players don't see on a day-to-day basis, especially playing in a conference like the AAC with a guy who's 7'6". I mean, you might not see that ever again in your lifetime as a basketball player. So I think that he's going to create matchup problems. I think UCF is very talented. I don't think they're the most talented team in this conference by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that they cause the most matchup problems, and I think that, you look at their last 3 games. They've had to play Cincy, they've had to play Houston, they've had to play Temple. They were able to win 2 of those 3 games against arguably the 2 best teams in this conference already. So I think that they're peaking at the right time. Had a little hiccup against Temple to hopefully reset their mindset, get them right for the tournament. But I have UCF. And I would say my only dark horse here might be Memphis.
The dark horse is the con, man. It's much.
That is true.
The con can win this fucking tournament. We all know it. But
Great, hats off for you for knowing this much about the American Athletic Conference.
This is amazing. But
dude, I'm telling you, I have watched more college basketball this year than you can shake a stick at.
That's pretty impressive.
I'm determined where Tulane season went off the rails, Fletcher.
Please do.
First 4 games.
Okay, well, you see, it started off.
Well, real quick, I'm going to defend Tulane before you tell me about where they fucked off. They defended that home court this year. They went 3-12 on their home court.
So on December 17th, long time ago, almost 4 months, they beat Texas Southern by 7. Hard-fought battle in old Tulane. They then went on to the next game a mere 4 days later and lost to Towson, who finished 4-7 and in 11th place in the mighty Colonial Athletic Conference.
Woo!
By 21.
Oh, wow.
So that was it.
You want to hear? Okay, so Texas Southern, they beat Texas Southern. Tulane did.
Yeah, by 7.
Dude, Texas Southern, they are one of the teams in college basketball. Like every single year, they have this ridiculous non-conference schedule. Let me run you through that real quick. They played Baylor.
Shit like this.
They beat Baylor. They lost to Gonzaga. They lost to Iowa State. They lost to San Diego State. They beat Oregon. And then they lost to Georgia and lost to Arizona State. That is a ridiculous non-conference schedule for a team who's very, very bad. And the fact that Tulane beat them after they beat Baylor and Oregon is pretty remarkable, honestly.
That's an athletic director who's like, yep, you know what? We'll just take all these ass beatings and we'll just load it up a bunch of money into our athletic department.
Yes, and Oregon actually had ball on that night that they lost to Texas Southern. All right, so it is our time to put our producer in the spotlight. He goes out to each week and watches several movies, and he brings one in to review for the podcast. Leighton, see, what do you got for us today?
1 2 1 2 Pip's Entertainment Review. Sit on down for a movie to view.
So this week I'm going to review Captain Marvel. It's the newest movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, whatever. Captain Marvel first kind of made her, not really appearance, but like her presence known at the end of Infinity War, when before Nick Fury like dissolved or whatever and went away. He dropped a page there that had her logo or symbol on it. That's how you knew she was going to come and save the day in the next Avengers movie. But, so the movie, Marvel, I think for the past 2 or 3 years have made really, really good movies. Not superhero movies, but just good overall movies. And for the first time, this one felt really rushed. Like, it's like they knew they had a plot point or a plot hole almost, that they had to bring in a new character to beat Thanos in the last Avengers movie. And they had to figure out how to do that. So they threw together a script, didn't look over it too much, said, okay, this will do. This will make us about $16,000 billion. Let's make it. But this movie, I feel like would have been better as kind of like a 6-part miniseries that they're going to start doing that on their like Disney Plus streaming service they're going to have end of the year. They're going to have TV shows that tie into the movies. I think it's really good one of those to do that. Have 6 parts so you can get to know actually the entire build up to her. Because the way it starts is the whole movie is based in the late 80s or early 90s. So you could really have that whole thing work up instead of just giving us a 2-hour thing just to put her in the universe so it makes sense when she comes back in 1 month to fight Thanos. This is the first thing they've done that I felt really rushed and unprepared for. And I think they just got to a point with the movies. They said, okay, we have 2 movies left. How are we going to get to the next phase? And they're like, well, let's just bring in this godlike character, Captain Marvel. And how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to make a shit movie that's going to make us hundreds of millions of dollars. And no one's going to care about it. Probably my least favorite Marvel movie. I'm going to get 1.6 dips. You're only going to see it if you've seen every other one and you want to know what happens next.
So, do you think that this is a movie that they should have probably made the mini-series or whatever prior to actually making the movie?
Oh, yeah, definitely. No, the movie shouldn't exist at all. It should just be a mini-series.
Huh.
Like, I don't think it's, like, it just didn't work, like, because her life went through, like, several stages. So, shit, there are 2 options. Make a 3-hour movie that no one would want to see a 3-hour movie to that, or just cut it down to where it's super condensed and gives you a shit ton of Easter eggs and everything all at once.
Yeah, who actually plays Captain Marvel?
Brie Larson. She won an Academy Award for Boom. One night, she was on Jimmy Kimmel, you text me that she was a babe. She is a babe.
Interesting. Sounds like they made the right choice then.
She was good.
Do you know how Bugs Bunny would defeat Thanos?
How?
In the middle of the battlefield, Bugs Bunny would be like, hey man, if you want to get through here, you got to go through this metal detector. And Thanos would take his glove off. And then Bugs Bunny would beat him that way.
Yep. Yep.
That'd be pretty smart.
If I'm superhero movies, that's how they would go.
So guys, any bold predictions for this sports week?
Yep, and my predictions are already coming true. I said that the Raiders were going to open up the checkbook and be big spenders in a huge way. They just now, while we've been doing the show, Trent Brown, they signed him to a 4-year, $66 million contract.
Wow.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
So I was going to say Le'Veon Bell, too. They might be spending too much money already to go out and drop big money on Le'Veon Bell.
It's going to be close. Unless my prediction happens and they trade Derek Carr and then draft
Now
Kyler
you're
Murray.
making sense, Leighton.
I honestly think that's what they're going to ultimately do.
And that might not happen this week, but it probably won't because too many things have to happen 1 week for that to happen. But I would not be surprised if they traded Derek Carr, got enough money, signed Le'Veon Bell, packaged the 4 first-round picks or whatever, traded up to number 1 and got Kyler Murray.
God, that'd be so fucking dumb, but I could see it happening.
It's John Gruden, man.
Yeah, it is John Gruden.
He's been lubing up the deals.
Oh yeah, he's always working for his next move. So guys, my bold prediction for this sports week, I think we're gonna see. I don't necessarily think it's gonna be from one conference. You know how we always talk about it's a record number team of from this one conference. I think the record's actually 11 held by the ACC, but I think that we're gonna see, as far as 2 conferences go, maybe a record number for just 2 conferences alone. I think the SEC and the ACC are both going to have a ton, and I mean a ton, almost to a fault to where people are mad, having the discussion like they did a few years ago when Syracuse ultimately went to the Final Four about Syracuse getting into the tournament. SEC, ACC, tournament's going to be absolutely loaded with teams from those conferences, almost to a fault. And my other bold prediction, I think Le'Veon Bell will be a Raider by this time next week.
Okay. But I say the
I
cap
hope it
works
happens.
out now.
I'm just loving all this Raiders stuff that's happening right now, and I want to see more of it.
Oh, I agree. We love seeing John Gruden make dumb decisions.
Trent Brown's always a dude I cite on Madden, too, for my right tackle.
Oh, yeah. He's a massive human being. He's like 378 pounds, 6'7".
Yeah, I was going to say, on the game it says he's 380. I mean, he's a massive dude.
Yeah, he is massive. Anything else before we wrap this show up?
Home Troops Hysteria, gonna have a little change to it due to the scheduling issues and stuff. We're gonna be recording on Tuesdays. It's gonna come out on Wednesdays, but some shows will be a bunch of solo just because I can't do it every Tuesday. So, but it'll be there.
All right.
We're working on it.
And guys, be sure to listen next week for part 2 of the Aaron Elliott interview. And on that note, for Drake, for Leighton, and Fletch, Dippers, as always, stay saucy.